Renowned physician, educator, award-winning scientist, inventor, and #1 best-selling author, Dr. Nicholas Pericone, reveals the modern-day answers to the ancient questions: has science found a way to turn back the clock? In Forever Young, Part 5 of the highly acclaimed university lecture series, discover the revolutionary science of nutrigenomics, the science of allowing us to reconfigure our genetic blueprint. So let's join foremost anti-aging scientist and board-certified dermatologist, Dr. Nicholas Pericone, to discover nutrigenomics and why now more than ever there are anti-aging options. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Nicholas Pericone.
Welcome to the 5th of the University Lecture Series. You know, it was 10 years ago on this campus, in this very room, where I introduced my first book called The Wrinkle Cure. And in that book, I discussed my views on aging, which were looked upon as a little bit radical at that time, but it's nice to say that this time it's become mainstream. Essentially, aging and age-related diseases were caused by inflammation. And that tends to confuse people because they say, inflammation, what do you mean? Well, I'm not talking about gross inflammation, which doctors call clinically evident inflammation. I'm talking about inflammation that is subclinical or on a microscopic or submicroscopic level. And so if we look at inflammation as a spectrum, it's the low-grade inflammation. We can't see it, we can't feel it, but it goes on all of the time in our cells, causing destruction to major organ systems. And so I also mentioned that such diverse diseases as Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, cancer, cardiovascular disease, obesity, and wrinkles are all mediated by inflammation. And if you think about that, that is a pretty radical thought, that all of those diverse changes in our body can come about from inflammation. The way I came across this, as a medical student, we had to cover a course called histopathology. And what we had to do is we had to look under the microscope at every disease process, so we knew what it looked like clinically when we saw a patient and what it looked like microscopically. And I was looking at squamous cell cancer and noticed what I call an inflammatory infiltrate. And under the microscope, that just looks like you see a tumor and you'll see this blue confetti around it. And I thought, gee, why is the inflammation around this cancer? So I asked the professor, I said, I'm looking at this cancer and I'm seeing a lot of inflammation. Is it possible that inflammation could be somehow driving the growth of this tumor? And the answer was a flat out no. It's the immune system reacting. And I thought that was odd because usually cancers bypass our immune system. I carried that with me, and then as we studied more disease processes, whether it was atherosclerosis, there was inflammation in the arteries, diabetes, inflammation in the pancreas, and then when I started my dermatology residency, I'm looking at skin under the microscope at all different skin processes, and aging skin had an inflammatory infiltrate, but young skin did not. And so I was very much convinced that inflammation was at the basis of aging and many of the disease processes. Carrying that a little further, I said, okay, if inflammation is causing this problem, then what's causing the inflammation? And that was a bit of a mystery, and it took more than a couple of years to come to a conclusion. But fortunately, I was a bit of a self-taught nutrition nut as I was growing up, and had read everything by Linus Pauling, and actually had talked to Linus Pauling. And Adele Davis was another nutritionist. Salmon, high-quality protein. You need protein to repair your cells. In addition to the protein in salmon, there's a lot of color to salmon, and that comes from an antioxidant called astaxanthin. And that's one of the carotenoids. And astaxanthin is a very powerful carotenoid and can reduce inflammation very rapidly in the body and the skin. Studies taking astaxanthin supplements over 12 weeks with various people of different ages, we can actually see a reduction in visible wrinkles. That's just in 12 weeks from astaxanthin.